5th grade. Okay, so I uploaded 13 through 15, but because of some weirdness on my computer, because it was hooked up to a speaker at the time, it didn't actually have any audio. So, what we're going to do is I'm going to re-record it now and delete the other video and upload this one instead. Hopefully this one actually has audio. That would be nice. Okay, so we're in chapter 13. Let's see, we left off with Despereaux was going to the dungeon. He had been sentenced to go to the dungeon. His mother had fainted, bringing all the attention on her instead of her child who was about to go die. And then instead of saying something helpful like, take me instead, or he's innocent, don't hurt him, she instead just says, farewell, or bye, and that really would not be the most helpful thing to hear from a parent if you were about to go get locked in a dungeon with a ton of rats who want you dead. So, let's dive back in. Chapter 13, Perfidy Unlimited. Together, the three mice traveled down, down, down. The thread around Despereaux's neck was tight. He felt as if it was choking him. He tugged at it with one paw. Don't touch the thread, barked the second hood. Yeah, echoed the first hood. Don't touch the thread. They moved quickly, and whenever Despereaux slowed, one of the two hoods poked him in the shoulder and told him to keep moving. They went through holes in the wall and down golden stairs. They went past rooms with doors that were closed and doors that were flung wide. The three mice traveled across marble floors and under heavy velvet drapes. They moved through warm patches of sunlight and dark pools of shade. This, thought Despereaux, was the world he was leaving behind, the world that he knew and loved. And somewhere in it, the Princess P was laughing and smiling and clapping her hands to music, unaware of Despereaux's fate. That he would not be able to let the princess know what had become of him seemed suddenly unbearable to the mouse. Would it be possible for me to have one last word with the princess? Despereaux asked. A word, said the second hood. You want a word with a human? I want to tell her what's happened to me. Jeez, said the first hood. He stopped and stamped a paw on the floor in frustration. Cripes, you can't learn, can you? The voice was terribly familiar to Despereaux. Fellow, he said. What? Said the first hood irritably. Despereaux shuddered. His own brother was delivering him to the dungeon, and his heart stopped beating and shrunk into a small, cold, disbelieving pebble. But then, just as quickly, it leapt alive again, beating with hope. Fellow, Despereaux said, and he took one of his brother's paws in his own. Please, let me go. Please, I'm your brother. Despereaux rolled his eyes and took his paw out of Despereaux's. No, he said. No way. Please, Despereaux said. No, said Furlough. Rules are rules. Reader, do you recall the word perfidy? As our story progresses, perfidy becomes an ever more appropriate word, doesn't it? Perfidy was certainly the word that was in Despereaux's mind as the mice finally approached the narrow, steep stairs that led to the black hole of the dungeon. They stood, the three mice, two with hoods and one without, and contemplated the abyss before them. And then Furlough stood up on his hind legs and placed his right paw over his heart. For the good of the castle mice, he announced to the darkness, we deliver this day to the dungeon a mouse in need of punishment. He is, according to the laws we have established, wearing the red thread of death. The red thread of death, repeated Despereaux in a small voice. Wearing the red thread of death was a terrible phrase, but the mouse didn't have long to consider its implications, because he was suddenly pushed from behind by the two hooded mice. The push was a strong one, and it sent Despereaux flying down the stairs into the dungeon. As he tumbled whisker over tail through the darkness, there were only a few words in his mind. One was perfidy, and the other words he clung to was Princess P. Perfidy, Princess P. Perfidy, Princess P. These were the words that pinwheeled through Despereaux's mind as his body descended into the darkness. Chapter 14. Darkness, because, continuity. Despereaux lay on his back at the bottom of the steps and touched the bones in his body one by one. They were all there, and amazingly, they were unbroken. He got to his feet and became aware of a terrible, foul, extremely insulting smell. The dungeon, reader, stank. It stank of despair and suffering and hopelessness, which is to say the dungeon smelled of rats. It was so dark. Despereaux had never before encountered darkness so awful, so all-encompassing. The darkness had a physical presence, as if it were a being all its own. The mouse held one paw up in front of his whiskers, and he could not see it. He was truly alarming in the thought that perhaps he, Despereaux Tilling, did not even exist. Oh my, he said out loud. His voice echoed in the smelly darkness. Perfidy, said Despereaux, just to hear his voice again and to ensure himself he did exist. Princess P, said Despereaux, and the name of his beloved was immediately swallowed up by the darkness. He shivered, he shook, he sneezed, his teeth chattered, he longed for his handkerchief. He grabbed a hold of his tail. It took him a long, frightening moment to even locate his tail, so absolute was this darkness, just so he had something, anything, to hold on to. He considered fainting. He deemed it the only reasonable response to the situation in which he found himself, but then he remembered the words of the Threadmaster: honor, courtesy, devotion, and bravery. I will be brave, thought Despereaux. I will try to be brave like a knight in shining armor. I will be brave for the Princess P. But how best for him to be brave? He cleared his throat, let go of his tail, and stood up straighter. Once upon a time, he said out loud to the darkness. He said these words because they were the best, most powerful words he knew, and just saying them comforted him. Once upon a time, he said again, feeling a tiny bit braver, there was a knight, and he wore, always, a suit of shining armor. Once upon a time, boomed a voice from the darkness, a knight in shining armor? What does a mouse know of such things? That voice, the loudest voice Despereaux had ever heard, could only, he assumed, belong to the world's largest rat. Despereaux's small, overworked heart stopped beating, and for the second time that day, the mouse fainted. Chapter 15. Light. Notice the contrast from last chapter, darkness. When Despereaux awoke, he was cupped in a large calloused hand of a human, and he was staring into the fire of one match, and beyond the match there was a large dark eye looking directly at him. A mouse with red thread, boomed the voice. Oh yes, Gregory knows the way of mice and rats. Gregory knows, and Gregory has his own thread mocking him. See here, mouse. And the match was held to a candle, and the candle sputtered to life, and Despereaux saw that there was a rope tied around the man's ankle. Here is the difference between us. Gregory's rope saves him, and your thread will be the death of you. The man blew the candle out, and darkness descended, and the man's hand closed more tightly around Despereaux, and Despereaux felt his beleaguered heart start up a crazy rhythm of fear. Who are you? He whispered. The answer to that question, mouse, is Gregory. You're talking to Gregory the jailer, who's been buried here, keeping watch over this dungeon for decades, for centuries, for eons, for eternities. You're talking to Gregory the jailer, who, in the richest of ironies, is nothing but a prisoner here himself. Oh, said Despereaux. May I get down, Gregory? Mouse wants to know if Gregory the jailer will let him go. Listen to Gregory, Mouse. You do not want to be let go. Here in this dungeon you are in treacherous dark art of the world, and if Gregory was to release you, the twistings and turnings and dead ends and false doorways of this place would swallow you up for all eternity. Only Gregory and the rats can find their way through this maze. The rats because they know the way of it, because it mirrors their own dark arts, and Gregory because of the rope that's forever tied to his ankle to guide him back to the beginning. Gregory would let you go, but you'd only beg him to take you up again. The rats are coming for you, see? They are? Listen, said Gregory. You can hear their tails dragging through the muck and the filth. You can hear them filing their nails and teeth. They're coming for you. They're coming to take you apart, piece by piece. Despereaux listened, and he was quite certain that he heard the nails in the teeth of the rats, the sound of sharp things being made sharper still. They will strip all the fur from your flesh, and all the flesh from your bones, and when they're done with you, there will be nothing left except red thread and bones. Gregory has seen it many times, the tragic end of a mouse. But I need to live, said Despereaux. I can't die. You cannot die. Ah, that is lovely. He says he cannot die. Gregory closed his hand more tightly around Despereaux. And why would that be, Mouse? Why is it you cannot die? Because I'm in love. I love somebody, and it is my duty to serve her. Love, said Gregory. Love? Ark you, I'll show you the twisted results of love. And another match was struck. The candle was lit again, and Gregory held it up so its flame illuminated a massive, towering, teetering pile of spoons and kettles and soup bowls. Look on that, Mouse, said Gregory. That is a monument to the foolishness of love. What is it? Asked Despereaux, and he stared up at the great tower that reached up, up, up into the blackness. What it looks like. Spoons, bowls, kettles, all of them gather here as odd evidence of the pain of loving a living thing. The king loved the queen, and the queen died, and this monstrosity, this junk heap, is the result of that love. I don't understand, said Despereaux. And you will not understand until you lose what you love. But enough about love, said Gregory, and he blew out the candle. We will talk instead about life, and how Gregory will save yours, if you so desire. Why would you save me? Despereaux asked. Have you saved any of the other mice? Never, said Gregory. Not one. Why would you save me then? Because you, Mouse, can tell Gregory a story. Stories are light. Light is precious in a world so dark. Begin at the beginning, tell Gregory a story, make some light. And because Despereaux wanted very much to live, he said, once upon a time, yes, said Gregory happily, and he raised his hand up higher and then higher still until Despereaux's whiskers brushed against his leathery, time-worn ear. Go on, Mouse, said Gregory, tell Gregory a story. And it was in this way that Despereaux became the only mouse sent to the dungeon whom the rats did not reduce to a pile of bones and a piece of red thread. It was in this way Despereaux was saved. Reader, if you don't mind, this is where we will leave our small mouse for now, in the dark of the dungeon, in the hand of an old jailer, telling a story to save himself. It is time for us to turn our attention elsewhere. Time for us, reader, to speak of rats, and one rat in particular. End of the first book. And the second book, which we will save for next time, is Despereaux, which is Italian, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure if I can do an Italian accent. We will figure out next time, though. This is the end of our reading for today. A bit shorter, but I figured we would, parse it out. I think next time it's going to be longer. I'm actually going to do the whole of Despereaux's story, which is, golly, let's see, how many pages is that? Dun, dun, dun. 30 pages-ish is the next one. So the next video might be a bit longer. You might want to break it into a couple pieces. But anyways, there you go. That is our installment of Tale of Despereaux for today. I hope you all have a wonderful day and are helping your parents at home. I miss you all very much, and I want to be back in class with you soon. All right, have a good one.